I picked up the knife and I went back to the bedroom. I took the sheets off and I caught him.
The following video may contain disturbing or graphic content. Viewer discretion is advised. Lorena Gallo had a sheltered upbringing in South America. Born in Quito, Ecuador in 1970, she moved to Venezuela with her family when she was 5 years old. There, she was raised as a devout Catholic, following strict rules about sex and marriage. She never dated anyone without a chaperone, and she dreamed of finding her true love and starting a family. When she was 19, she defied her parents' wishes and moved to the United States on a student visa. She settled in the state of Virginia, attended college, and soon met John Wayne Bobbitt, a handsome Marine who swept her off her feet. They met at a club for enlisted men, and they dated for 10 months, always with a chaperone. He proposed to her in an ice cream parlor, and they got married shortly after. Lorena Bobbitt thought she had found her Prince Charming, but little did she know that her fairy tale would soon turn into a nightmare. Lorena's marriage to John was far from happy. She claims that he started to abuse her only a month after they tied the knot in 1989. He was a heavy drinker, a controlling husband, and a reckless spender. She worked full-time at a nail salon, and after leaving the military, John only worked part-time, taking temporary gigs like a bar bouncer or taxi driver. She said he would control all the finances, taking the wages she earned and spending it however he liked. Lorena said that John would be unfaithful and drunkenly describe in graphic detail about his encounters with other women in order to humiliate and hurt her. She alleges that he used, quote, Marine Corps torture techniques on her, twisting her hands and feet, which resulted in a trip to the hospital. She said he slapped, kicked, choked, and punched her, that he prevented her from escaping the abuse by disconnecting the phone and removing the doorknobs from the doors so that she couldn't call for help or lock herself in another room. In 1990, after a domestic incident, the military had a social worker visit John, and he admitted to physical and emotional abuse. He indicated several categories on the social worker's report sheet, including pushed, carried, restrained, grabbed, or shoved, and hit her or tried to hit her with something. In the military, not all reports of intimate partner violence are reported to the police or up the chain of military command. Not to mention that in the early 90s, these issues were not addressed with the same scrutiny they are today. She describes many instances of him forcing himself on her, sometimes even punching and kicking her, then pulling up her skirt. One particular incident in 1992 was so horrific, it caused her to bleed, and he repeated these actions on more than one occasion. His gym buddies said that John would tell them how he liked to, quote, make girls squirm and yell and bleed, and make them yell for help. John always maintained that he never hit her or forced himself on her, and that he only restrained her when she got upset, telling her it was, quote, not ladylike to strike out.
You never fought back?
Tried to, subdue her or restrain her. Not to hit her.
Lorena kept her abuse a secret from everyone. She skillfully applied makeup to conceal the bruises on her face. She wore multiple layers of clothing, even in the summer, to hide the marks on her arms and body. But sometimes her customers at the nail salon noticed something was wrong. Acquaintances of the couple said that he would often yell at her in public. He criticized her appearance, accused her of flirting with other men, and controlled every aspect of her life. She felt trapped, scared, and hopeless, and sank into a deep depression. One of the most traumatic instances for Lorena was on June 15, 1990. Lorena had become pregnant, but John did not want a child. He pressured her into ending her pregnancy, which she did not consent to, and which violated her religious beliefs. In Catholicism, this is considered a serious sin, and until 2016, it would result in excommunication, being excluded from being a member of the church or participating in its religious ceremonies. This event would have been extremely traumatic for her. According to some studies, women who undergo forced birth or forced terminations are more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the experience. Lorena may have considered the event an attack on her femininity, preventing her from motherhood and invading her reproductive organs, and probably mourned the death of her unborn child, considering she wanted to continue her pregnancy. As a result, her anniversary grief reactions were likely to be more severe and persistent than those of people who lose loved ones due to terminal illness or age. In addition, her anniversary grief reactions may have triggered or worsened her other symptoms of PTSD, such as flashbacks, nightmares, avoidance, anger, and depression. Lorena endured violence, humiliation, and distress for 4 long years, until one night she snapped. On the night of June 23, 1993, Lorena stated that John came home drunk after spending the whole night bar hopping, and he again forced himself on her. He then fell into a deep alcohol-induced sleep, and she was alone with her thoughts. She walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water and to try to calm down. When she opened the fridge, the light bathed the kitchen, glinting off a Ginsu knife on the counter.
The Ginsu can cut a slice of bread so thin you can almost see through it. It cuts meat better than an electric knife.
She claims she went into a dissociative state, unable to stop the violent visions of the things she had endured over the years. The next thing she knew, she found herself in her car, driving towards her workplace at the nail salon. She was on autopilot when driving, unaware of what she was doing or where she was going. However, unlike most people who experience this phenomenon, she had something in her hand that would shock the world: John's severed penis. Meanwhile, John's friend Robert had crashed in the guest room that night. John kicked him awake in the middle of the night, covered in blood and clutching his mutilated groin. Robert drove John to the hospital, where the staff mistook the source of blood for an injury on his arm. When John lifted his hands and revealed his horrific wound, the ER doctor gasped in horror and called for help. The hospital staff contacted Dr. James Sen, a urologist, and Dr. David Berman, a plastic surgeon who specialized in microsurgery. They were told, quote, "We've got this guy here whose penis has been cut off. Can you come down and basically put it back on?" The doctors asked about the severed organ and were both surprised and worried when they were told about the missing part. The doctors knew John needed emergency treatment, irrespective of the status of the missing member. They prepped him for surgery and the grim reality of what would happen if they didn't locate it. When John was being wheeled into the operating room, the doctors got word that the police had located the organ and were bringing it to the hospital. When Lorena realized what she was holding, she was overcome with fear and disgust and flung it out the window. She drove to her boss Jana's house, hoping to find help and comfort. Jana's first thought was that John had done something to Lorena, not the other way around. She hugged Lorena and tried to soothe her. When Lorena told Jana that she had, quote, cut John, Jana calmly called 911 and got Lorena to describe roughly where she threw it out the window. As a result, the police located it in a field across the street from a 7-Eleven, so they went into the convenience store for a bag of ice and a brown paper bag to preserve the appendage for transport to the hospital. One of the officers involved in the search said, quote, "I don't think I'll ever forget that sight as long as I live." At the hospital, John was undergoing a complex and delicate replantation surgery, which took 9 hours to complete. The main goal was to restore feeling and circulation in the organ, by sewing together every nerve and blood vessel. John spent 3 weeks in intensive care, mainly to keep the media from hounding him. When he woke up and was told the operation was successful, he described it as the happiest day of his life. He also recounted the first time he realized the operation really worked, at which point he called his mother to tell her. Lorena faced a serious charge of malicious wounding, which could have landed her in prison for up to 20 years. She had to prove to the jury that she was not a cold-blooded criminal, but a desperate victim of abuse. In court, she revealed the shocking details of her marriage to John. She said she had acted in a state of temporary insanity, triggered by his last assault on her. The defense called many witnesses who testified they had seen evidence of abuse. John's defense claimed that she wounded him as an act of jealousy and anger because he told her that he wanted a divorce. Expert witnesses for both sides testified that Lorena was severely clinically depressed and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. The defense's expert witnesses said she was living in constant fear of her husband and had experienced a bout of temporary insanity. The prosecution's experts disagreed, saying she had an impulse that she chose not to control. The trial lasted for 2 weeks and captured the nation's attention. Lorena was ultimately found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity. She was sent to a hospital for 5 weeks of treatment and evaluation and was then released. The following year, her divorce proceedings with John were finalized. John Wayne Bobbitt was acquitted of marital sexual assault because most of the evidence introduced in Lorena's trial was not allowed into the record. His trial mainly focused on the days immediately preceding the wounding. It was revealed a few months later that he fathered a child with another woman while married to Lorena. It was proved by a paternity test when the mother sought child support via the family court system. He was approached to star in an adult film in 1994 called John Wayne Bobbitt Uncut.
I'm not fully healed yet, but I still can have sex and it doesn't leak,
It was the top-selling adult film of that year, and as a result, he was able to afford enlargement surgery in preparation for his second film, Frankenpenis, in 1996. John tried to cash in on his newfound fame by embarking on a promotional tour, where he took part in bizarre stunts or gave away autographed steak knives. He fell in love with an exotic dancer and they got engaged, but in 1994, he was convicted of misdemeanor domestic battery against her. He spent 15 days in jail, was on probation for 6 months, and ordered to participate in an anger management program and Alcoholics Anonymous. However, he continued his downward spiral of crime and violence. He was arrested several times for theft, violating probation, and domestic battery against his second wife. He served jail time for some of these charges and was eventually divorced. In 2014, he was involved in a car accident and broke his neck. He remains chronically injured and received a disability settlement for his injury. After the trial, Lorena Gallo also had additional trouble with the law, being accused of domestic assault against her mother, whom she lived with. However, she was not convicted of any crime in that case. She tried her best to disappear from the public eye and to rebuild her life as a cosmetologist. She dedicated herself to helping other survivors of domestic abuse through her own nonprofit organization. She found love again with a new partner, and they have a daughter together. In 2009, she revealed on the TV show The Insider that John still tried to contact her with messages, cards, and flowers. John also appeared on the show and said he was sorry for how he treated her in the past. Lorena's story was revisited in a 2019 Amazon docuseries and a 2020 documentary that she narrated herself. What do you think of the John and Lorena Bobbitt story? Do you think she was a victim or a villain? How do you feel about John's path in life, his apology, or his attempts to reach out to her? Let me know in the comments section below. If you or someone you know is suffering from abuse, please don't hesitate to seek help. You can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visit their website at thehotline.org. If you are in need of reproductive health care, you can contact Planned Parenthood at 1-800-230-7526 or go to plannedparenthood.org. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this case and found it interesting. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel for more true crime stories. As always, feel free to share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again, and be sure to join us next time as we explore the stories hidden within the wrinkles in crime.